astronauts to the moon.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Hey everybody, Jeranism again, back with another video. I do apologize for not getting one out in the last week or so. My movie making software seems to like to crash my computer, so I've kind of got that fixed. Hopefully things will be better going forward. And the other reason is this is a video I kind of dreaded doing, did not want to do. Had no intent on doing it, but I did receive about 30 or 40 emails from people who all seem very interested in knowing what I believe or why I make claims against Christianity and at the same time science, basically asking me like I had to pick one. So what I decided to do was to kind of give you an overview of how I come to the conclusions I come to and kind of a little story about my life, so you can take that or leave it, and if you're not interested in it, feel free to turn off the video at any time. I'm not forcing you to watch it. But if you do care, maybe you can see I've kind of gone through a past that maybe others haven't got a chance to go through, some of the situations and things that I have, so I wanted to kind of cover that and remind you never to believe anything that I say or take that as fact, because what I'm trying to teach people to do is open their eyes and use their own brains to come to their own conclusions, and that's basically what I do and how I've come to the conclusions I have. And I'm going to kind of give you a little overview throughout this video. Lots to cover. We've got some evolution video from Richard Dawkins, some more stuff from Bill Nye, some stuff from Neil deGrasse, and I'll start off by going through some science things and why I have an issue with science, and then we'll go through some religious things and why I have issues with religion. So to start off, just to tell you about my life, I was born in a Catholic hospital to a very Catholic involved family. My mom was the director of liturgy at our local Catholic church. So I was baptized. I went through catechism. If any of you are Catholic, you know what that is. Basically, grade school Catholic education once a week during my 1st through 6th grade years. 7th and 8th grade, I went to a Catholic school, so Catholic middle school. Then I got accepted at an all-boys Catholic high school. So I went there. It's a college preparatory school. About 1,500 boys, all Jesuit run, meaning that 80% of my teachers were Jesuit Catholic priests. So as I said, it was baptism, First Communion, received reconciliation, then became confirmed in my teenage years. I was also president of the youth group for a few years. I raised money and took a trip to the Philippines for World Youth Day 1994 to see the Pope, which at the time was John Paul II. That was an event with over 4 million people, all in the same place at the same time. Pretty incredible. I worked as a receptionist at the church. As I said, Catholic junior high, Catholic high school. That being said, I've been through all that indoctrination. That is, without a doubt, have heard what the Catholic Church has to say. I know their teachings, and that's all well and dandy. In my, my early 20s, I did just kind of forget a lot of it, break away from it, do my own thing. Always kind of held it a little bit close to me, but knew that it definitely wasn't fully true. I met my wife in 2006, 2007-ish. She was from a Bible-believing family, Christian. She also was the kind of same place in her life that I was, not really a practicing Christian. And so when we got engaged and bought our house, We spent a lot of the first year not really paying much attention to it either way. We got engaged and then got married. And one of the things that really started this whole thing was in deciding where we wanted to get married. It was a question because my family being very Catholic, her family being very Christian, we wanted a wedding that was happy for both people. So we knew we were going to have to do some sort of compromise, and we just decided it was better to go with what was best for us. And we wanted something that was just very secular in the middle. This way it wasn't catering to one or the other family more. So we decided to get married basically in a barn. It was what they call a party barn at a family friend's property. It was great. We loved our wedding. It was small and simple. A lot of people, but not a lot of cost. The night before our wedding, at our reception dinner, or rehearsal dinner, sorry, her brother-in-law, her sister's husband, who runs a very successful Christian fundamentalist kind of New Age church, came up to us and asked us who was marrying us. He said, who's marrying you guys tomorrow? And we said that we had decided that one of my friends would. He was going up to the judge to get basically a license to marry us for that day. He then proceeded to tell us that if we didn't have a Christian pastor marry us, that our marriage would not be seen in the eyes of God. At which point we told him to fuck off, basically. And this was just more of the fuel that added to our fire, that we both knew something was up. And this is the kind of thing that probably sends many people away from the church, is where does he get off in saying anything like that at all? So we were married, happy, and we had both lost or quit our jobs by early the next year. And we had a book collection, a rather large one that had come together with her books and my books. And we decided to open an online bookstore. And that's what we did, and we still do. And we did a lot of reading, and we really started to investigate our faith, what we actually believed in. It was time that we had come to a conclusion. If we were going to have kids, how were we going to raise them? We just really wanted to kind of find out where we stand. Like I said, my mom is still very involved in the Catholic Church. Her family, obviously, very involved in their church. And so we just wanted to have a position we could stand on and be proud of, not to be so wishy-washy, not to never understand each other or where we really were. And so we just really started to dig in. I still remember we actually laid in bed, this was now 5 years ago, something like that, that we actually asked God for, in a prayer, for a year to really research our faith. And we just said, we want to know what we believe is true, not just believe what we're told. Please grant us a year to go through investigations and to really dig deep into what we believe. See what maybe people who are secular or who are atheists don't understand about the church is you are raised in a way that tells you if anything comes from the outside trying to get you to change your mind, that this is from the devil. They flat out say the devil is out there trying to fool you. He's trying to impact your connection with God. And these are the kind of things that we really wanted to investigate ourselves and said, let us decide that. We will be able to tell what's coming from the devil and what's not. And so that's where we began our journey. So as I said, the reason that I really dreaded this video and wasn't planning on making anything like it is because I'm about to upset both groups. It's not something I really wanted to do, but the atheist community, the theist community, I very much find myself in the middle, and so that's why it's tough to say some of the things I'm going to say, and also I don't want to say things and then you think that I'm telling you to believe the same way I do. So what I'm going to do is basically lay out a little outline of how I come to the conclusions I do and let you decide for yourself. That being said, if you are religious, if you are a Christian, if you are a Catholic, if you're a Protestant, whatever you are, Islamist, whatever, I would recommend doing the same thing that we did. I do not think you should have an issue with taking a year and discovering for yourself what you truly believe. The reason for this is we can't be responsible for what our parents teach us. That shouldn't be the way life is. I understand as a parent myself that it is our job to lead our children down what we feel is the right path. But if we are fooled ourselves, all we're doing is setting our kids up for disaster, for failure. And this is something that we did not think was fair, that's something that was not correct. So that's why we went on our year of study, which has taken us now into our 5th year. And that is because we quickly realized that a majority of what we were taught is completely false. And again, I'll tell you how we came to those conclusions. We quickly jumped and became atheists, as quick as you can imagine. Once we found things in the Bible that we knew were lies, once we dug deeper and found that the Catholic Church wrote the Bible, has rewrote the Bible, the dates of certain books in the Bible being much later than we were ever told, some stories in the Bible that just were simply left out of our teaching. As Christians, her family went to church and were read certain passages by pastors, and they just skipped over parts that they didn't want you to hear. Same thing with being a Catholic. There's only certain readings that they read, and you're actually told basically as a Catholic to not read the Bible as God's word because it had been adjusted and tainted. Well, they say that because they're the ones who wrote it. So, of course, they know that they added or subtracted from it. And then you have Christians who are Bible-believing Christians who, for some reason, don't understand that the Catholics, who they hate, are the writers of the Bible that they believe is God's word. So it's really just a messed up situation all around. One other thing I wanted to mention, and I always try and mention this because of this stigmata that's out there behind the Catholic Church. Remember that I told you I spent basically my whole life working with or around priests, worked at their office, which is where they live. If you don't know that Catholic priests live in the rectory, which is usually the church office, and that's where I worked. And I saw these men as fallible. I saw these men as regular human beings, confused like the rest of us. They obviously believe in God, and they obviously believe that they're doing the right thing. But they're just like everybody else. They're human beings. They're funny. They like sports. They make mistakes. They lie. They have bad days. Some of them drink too much. Some of them eat too much. It's who they are. It's who we all are as humans. We all have our bad spots. That being said, from the entire time I've been in the church, I've never had a priest at any point. And remember, I went to Catholic high school with Jesuits, 1,500 boys. I've never had a priest treat me anywhere other than with complete and total respect as a human being. You hear a lot about sexual abuse in the church, and I will tell you for one that I would never say that that's not true. Obviously, if those people are coming forward and saying those things, and I know priests have admitted it, so it is happening. But I think what people fail to realize is that the Catholic Church makes up about 15 to 20% of the entire population of the world. So we're talking 20% of 7 billion. So yeah, if some priests are out there molesting boys, I certainly don't think that that's fake or false. I think that that's probably very true. But I think if you took any collection of 20% of the entire population, that would be true. So I think it is an unfair stigmata placed on them, and I do understand that they hit it, and that's my problem with the whole situation. But I did want to say that I've known a lot of priests. I would even call some of them friends. My godfather's a bishop. But I think that what I'm trying to get across is that I do come from a position that I think allows me to see the church for what it truly is. And I think that's why I'm a good person to speak out against it, is because I know what they teach and why they teach it, and also know that some of the stuff has been hidden from everybody. George Carlin said, don't just teach your children to read, teach them to question what they read. Teach them to question everything. And I really wish that I was raised in that way. Not mad at my parents for the way that they raised me. I think I owe part of me being a good person to them. But I also think that I'm smart enough to make smart decisions and decisions that benefit the other people of this world. And I think that the church can prevent that. If you look at just Christianity and their hate towards gays and their hate for anybody who is outside of their belief, and the way that they parade around like they're better than everybody just because of their beliefs. which were given to them usually by their parents based on where they were born. So as I said, we did become atheists, and that was about a year of my life that I was into the atheist movement just like everyone else that I see out there who's an atheist. I was watching Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and Hutchins and Dennett and all these guys, and was really feeling it, was really into it. And as I started to dig deeper, because I saw that they were able to talk about the truth of evolution, and they were able to talk about the truth of the Big Bang and the truth of all these different things, and I wanted to investigate them further, because I said, if I'm going to go up against Christianity and Christians and Catholics, and I want to be somebody who can debate with them, then I want to know this stuff inside and out. And when I started to read books and really look into it, I saw it for the truth. And the truth is, it, like religion, is a lie. It's based on falsehood. And this became a real point of inquiry for me, is I had now dug deep into my faith and saw that that was unfounded, and then dug deep into my atheism and found it was unfounded. And that created a problem in my life, because like everyone else, you want to feel settled somewhere. That's where I think a majority of atheists come from, is that they simply wanted something that they could stand behind and feel good about, and they found science, and they said, hey, number one, this makes me look smart. Number two, I have a good backing of people behind me. We're against religion. We're against God. We think it's real funny that Christians are so stupid. And as I started to debate with these guys, I realized that they were all completely unintelligent themselves. They would repeat theories and, ha ha ha, you don't believe in gravity, and ha ha ha, you believe the world is 6,000 years old, and ha ha ha, you believe in an invisible man. And they basically get off on finding somebody that they think is stupider than they are. And this kind of began my whole journey, my whole search. And I basically said, you know what, I'm going to start over. I'm going to go back to the day one. And this started really with reading a lot of Tommaso Campanella. Because what we found more important than anything else was truth. And this is more important than being cool, more important than being liked, more important than people thinking you're crazy. Honesty is one thing that we felt could fix the entire world. When relationships or friendships end, it always seems like a lie is responsible. And so the search that we were on was a search for truth, and that's why we realized we had to go back to the beginning. We had no agenda. We were just searching and teaching people to use their minds, teaching ourselves to use our minds. So as I said, a distant relative of mine, 16th, 17th century Franciscan, an author, he has been swept into obscurity because his thoughts ran outside the accepted doctrine of the Catholic Church. Tommaso Campanella was an Italian philosopher. He was a priest, theologian, prophet, astrologer, writer, poet, and he taught us one thing in his writings, and it can be found in his book, Philosophia Sensibus Demonstrata, or Philosophy of Demonstrating, Philosophy as Demonstrated by the Senses. And this was his first book, printed in Naples in 1591. In this work, he promoted the commitment for a renewed connection to nature through direct study, which was in opposition to the contemporary practice of learned study through the canon of holy texts. And he strongly believed that one must investigate through their own experience, through their own senses, which only can come from direct contact and observation with the natural world. He argued that such a direct study results in a more true and proper connection between words and things, which had become obscured by the Aristotelian tradition. For his work, Tommaso was considered a heretic. He was actually jailed and tortured for 27 years. And while in prison, he actually continued to write and promote his idea that all things in nature were endowed with a sense perception, and suggested that all knowledge of objects outside the self comes through direct observations, a sort of innate principle. And this really struck home with my wife and I, as we said, this is what people need to do. People need to sense things themselves, and from that make decisions. and not just join groups. And I'm an atheist now, so I'm in the atheist group. I'm a Catholic now, so I believe what the Catholics believe. I'm a Republican now, so I believe what the Republicans believe. This is the problem with people, is that we are smart enough to have our own opinions, and our opinions are ones that make sense. But when we join groups and just get behind whatever the group's opinion is, this creates problems in the world. And we saw this and wanted to change it. And that's why I think our voice is important, is because we have gone through all the steps. I was fully Catholic, then I was in the middle, then I was fully atheist, and then I came out of that. And so if you continue watching this video, you'll see why I believe what I believe and where I came to these conclusions, and how I think that you can use the same steps. Maybe you won't come to the same conclusions, but I do think challenging what you believe now is important. And just because your parents taught you that if somebody comes speaking something different than what the Bible says, that they're coming from the devil, if you use some of my steps, I think you can quickly realize that for the most part, there is no devil. Is there a sense of negativity in the world? Is there a sense of evil in the world? Yeah, I believe that the human mind is an amazing apparatus that can allow you to see things that you want to see, and can allow you to sense anything. And so if you really believe hard enough that a demon is going to come into your room, you know what? You might get one. Does that mean that the demon is physically walked into your bedroom? Probably not. And so this will kind of give you an idea of where I get the theories and the things that I come up with, is because I send everything that I come across through a little system, a little outline, and I'll teach you how to do that right now. So let's take an easy one, a question like, does the United States Post Office deliver mail on Saturdays? And if I came to the conclusion that I wasn't sure, that I needed to research this a little bit, well, there's a little step, a little plan that I have made up. I call it TMI, and for that it stands for they, men, and I. And what you do with each of these questions is you run them through a little filter. The first one being they is, what do they think, or what do they tell us? What do they say? And by they I mean the United States Post Office, or whoever you're talking about. The second question is, what do men say? And by that I don't necessarily mean only men. Obviously I mean the world, the secular beliefs, the majority. What do men say? And then lastly, you want to go back to yourself. What do I see? And from that, if you run any question, any belief through this system, you'll see how you can really start to separate things between things you believe and things that you don't. So if we went through each of these, what do they say? The post office says that they deliver on Saturdays. And what do men say? Men say they deliver on Saturdays. What do I see? Well, I think I've seen them deliver and pick up on Saturday before. So my conclusion would be yes. It seems that the United States Post Office does deliver mail on Saturdays. This is a true statement, and I can push it into my true category. Occasionally you'll come across something that by the end of that you're still not sure. Let's take a look at, should I take Mormonism seriously? So by going through the TMI, what do they say? Well, Mormons say that they're a legit religion, that they are from God. So what do men say? Well, men say not so much, but on the other hand, Mitt Romney says that it is true. So what do I see? Well, I'm not really sure. I see them actually going to people's houses and trying to teach and trying to recruit. So I would be stuck at this point and still wouldn't be able to come up to a conclusion. So then I move on to step 2, which is basically called TMI squared. It's also the point of research, and it's also the point that I would call follow the money. And from there, you need to really start to dig into your question and also ask yourself questions like, what do they profit? Well, what does the Mormonism church profit? A lot. Look up who is responsible for Vegas, who is feeding the money into Vegas, who is making money off Vegas. Look at Utah. Look at they have multiple wives, or think that they're going to have multiple wives in the afterlife. So they profit quite a bit from it. What do men profit? Well, Mitt Romney is rich, but Mormonism is rich in lies. If you look into it and see why it was started, and the story of the golden plates, and the fact that no one's ever seen those but Joseph Smith, who the angel told him, He wasn't allowed to show anybody or to ever show the golden plates. So right away in your research and you looking into the prophets, you start to see the truth. And what do I profit? Nothing. I profit nothing from it. I lose money, I donate time, and I would get nothing out of it. So should I take the Mormon Church seriously? The answer is no. And basically, if you run everything through this filter that I just explained, you will start to see that your beliefs are a lot different than what you've been taught or what you may believe now. And so that's what I'm trying to teach, is for people to do things a different way with a different method and, examine yourself. This is a quote by Penn Jillette. Many of you know who he is. He said, there is no God, and that's the simple truth. If every trace of every single religion were wiped out and nothing were passed on, it would never be created exactly the same way again. There might be some other nonsense in its place, but not in the exact nonsense. If all science were wiped out, it would still be true, and someone would find a way to figure it all out again. To me, this statement is crap, for a lack of a better word. What he's saying is that if all religion was wiped out, that it would come back, but it would be different nonsense. And I think what he fails to realize is the fact that it would come back is telling that it's not just a archaic belief or these ancient scared humans were running around with the need to believe in something greater than themselves. Could it be possible that that feeling is inside of us? I think that's highly possible. If it would come back again after it was completely wiped out, wouldn't it mean that that was innate in human beings? So to his answer, I give a big no. See, to me, the religion is what's false. And so I do think half of his answer made sense. But his opening statement of there is no God and this is flat out truth, I think is an error on his judgment. He has said men have done terrible things with religion. Men have made crap beliefs and dogmatic beliefs. And from that he took that there's no God. And I don't go that same route, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the screen now, first of all, to all the secular and science preachers, what is this image? What is this video that we're watching? So you believe that we are in this endless space, and one of those little tiny lights is a sun with multiple planets rotating it in perfect unison and giving seasons and times, and that's what you believe, that we are one little minuscule piece of this gigantic mass of stars and galaxies and universes. And to me, that belief is insane. It is a belief that you have based on what men have told you. It is a belief that you have based on pictures that men have made for you, that they have made in Photoshop and told you are real. If you fly out in space and ever see that and get to fly to each of these stars and see the sun and see the rotating planets, then you can have that belief. But until then, I don't know where science gets off in making fun of religious people who have a belief based on what they've been told and what they've been taught and what they've been shown in books, and you think it's so hilarious that they have this belief while you believe in things that were taught, shown to you in pictures, and taught to you in books. It is no different. So what it has come to is science versus God, and I think both areas have so many problems that it really takes a person starting from the beginning and coming up with their own feelings and their own thoughts and their own beliefs, and then attacking the question from that perspective. Because if you take the groups on God's side, as far as religions and Christianity and Catholicism and Islam, you can find that it is filled with errors, mistakes, and what basically happened is it is a disconnection from the truth. It is men taking what they think they know and teaching others to believe the same thing, and it becomes convoluted, and it becomes based on error, based on falsities. And then if you take science, the same thing has happened. I used to love science. As much as I used to love religion and think that God was real and everything about it, Jesus was real, and I was the same way once I moved to science. I was really hoping that science was real, and the idea of all these planets and these galaxies is beautiful. It's a great idea. It's a great thought. But then when you start to look at it, humans have distorted it. The idea of science and the scientific method and what science was supposed to be has been completely removed from what science is now. Science is now a religion. It is the religion of scientism, and this can be easily seen in looking at any of the theories that they have that they will not let go. They're dogmatic. They are based on falsities and then taught as truth. And one way we can prove that is just look at your science class that you went to in high school. Did you remember the day where you debated whether the Earth was a sphere or flat? Of course not, because it was taught to you as a fact that the Earth is round. And whether or not that's the case, the application of science, or the study of science, is to investigate and test and to experiment, and from that you can come up with the truth or the facts. Well, the problem is that science isn't taught to us like that in school. Basically, you're told to read chapter 1, which is the planets, and you read about the solar system and you read about the planets, and then at the end of the week you're given a test where there are right and wrong answers. And science itself cannot have right or wrong answers because it isn't the study of what's right and wrong. It is the investigation into the truth of certain statements. But that's not how it's taught. And that should tell you something. It should be a big red flag when they're teaching you something and saying, this is the scientific method, these are the methods that you go through with each of these different problems and these statements and these questions, and then you get the truth. And then they go right into, and now here's the truth. And they give you the facts and they give you the figures, and you are not given any tools to investigate those. Where questioning science isn't blasphemy, questioning science is called science. Yet, everybody who's a science backer or believes in the scientism will come comment like crazy on my videos and tell me how stupid I am, rather than come with facts and figures, which would be science. They have a chance to convince me of their science. They have a chance to come in and say, well, actually, here are the different tests that we've done that show this, and here are the tests that disprove this. Instead, they just come in and laugh like monkeys and say how funny I am and how stupid we are and how ignorant we are, and this has already been found out and 2,000 years ago, and what idiots we are. Well, I think it should be a big red flag to people that that's happening. So to these so-called intellectuals and those who love to throw around the word logic and those that like to pop in and comment and laugh, and because I just question your faith in men, that's the problem. Because I question your dogma and your science, why is it rather than to combat me with science or facts and some sort of a debate, you jump quickly to name-calling? Just for questioning your orthodoxy. Basically, this is why I say science is a religion, and scientists and science backers will go crazy when I say that it's nothing like a religion, when everything I see tells me it is exactly like the religion I grew up with, that if I question it, I'm a heretic. And that's not science. Science is the questioning of everything. That is what science is. Science is filled with BS from the very start. Let's look at Aristophanes, who they tell us was the first to measure the circumference of the Earth, which would be pretty impressive. We're talking 200 BC, 300 BC. Now, what I've discovered, and I need to do some more research on it, is it all appears to be a fabrication. I can even find papers that from other people, mathematicians, that think that his entire persona is fabricated. He supposedly came up with a chart of prime numbers, and these guys who do these studies are saying if you look at any mathematical equation or any formula, they all came to be through a general process of learning. Basically, somebody would put out something small, somebody would come years after that and expand on that. No, not Aristophanes. He just came and plop, there is a chart full of all the prime numbers all the way up to infinity, and he's considered great and fantastic. And when you really look into it, these things you can't even find his writings. They've all been lost to antiquity, of course. The truth is, and I hope you guys will really start studying this, and don't take my word for it, and don't think I'm crazy, because I'm not. I look things up, I do my own research, I fact check, I look at different sources, and I come to my own conclusion, and my conclusion says science is a scam. The entire thing, top to bottom, is a complete and total scam. I mean, I'll just give you a couple points where you can think on yourself And for those of you that are truly for science, I mean, you're absolutely a fan of science and not just hitching a ride because you aren't capable any longer of any actual human thought, why won't you examine my evidence? Why won't you refute my claims or test or measure, relist, remeasure, the real scientific method as I was taught that you guys follow? How come when I start digging into it, you don't follow it? You don't follow it at all. You believe in facts and theories and you believe in formulas, but you don't test anything. Nothing is tested anymore. And I mean, the truth will always come out. Unless, of course, if I say XYZ is true and you laugh at me and call me a retard and throw in the standard tinfoil hat comment or the crack pipe comment, of course the truth won't come out. But who would do that unless somebody is telling a lie? If you loved science and were a fan of science and I came with claims that are counter evidence and they're not true, then you would refute me with evidence, not with name calling, not with putting people down and claiming that we're imbeciles. That's proof you're a liar. I mean, it proves to me a couple things. Number one, science is stupid. Number two, it's dogmatic. Number three, it reinforces my cynicism every day. And number four, it just believes that you believe in equations and theories and the word of man that was before you, and you have no brain any longer. You are not capable of thought. How about in education? Scientific explanations are given with the presumption that they're true. Students are getting zero opportunities, and I don't know about you guys, but I certainly got zero opportunity to experience the real scientific method. I mean, you guys know what scientific method I'm talking about. Where claims have to be supported by evidence, and they're subject to counterclaims and rebuttals and counter-arguments. I mean, where is this in schools? It makes no sense. Instead, it comes across in schools as if science is a monument of facts. It's this huge pile of facts, and questioning it or testing it are completely unimportant. That's not science. That is indoctrination. It's a religion, scientism. You've got Dawkins and you've got Krauss, your priest, your high priest, and your popes, and your Neil deGrasse feeding us with bullshit. It's bullshit. It is absolute bullshit, and if I'm lying, come at me with some evidence besides, well, it says so in this theory. I mean, it's nonsense. I hear that ships go down over the horizon. That's not true. Why was I taught in school that toilets in the southern hemisphere flush the other way? Not true. So who would be doing the lies? Would it be the people telling the truth who are giving us lies so that we further believe the truth? Or would it be the people who are telling us the lies are giving us the lies they say will help prove their lie? For a lack of a better way to say it, you're lying, science. Scientismists. You guys are full of shit. And I'm on to you. I mean, all this frightens me because what you do now is you observe things that don't match your evidence. For instance, observing things in space that are happening that gravitation doesn't explain. So rather than go back and look at gravity or look at special relativity and try and see if there's a mistake there or something that doesn't work, you just invented dark matter. You just invented dark energy. And now, in our school books, 95% of what we can, or what's in the universe, can't be seen. It can't be observed, meaning it doesn't exist. So you're making things up now to put crap on top of crap, and you're calling it science, and it's upsetting. I mean, why in school would it not be okay for a teacher to say, now, who here thinks the earth is flat? Half the class raise their hand. Who thinks it's round? Who thinks it's a sphere? Half the class raises their hand. Now take the next week to come up with your evidence and your experiments to prove one way or the other. Have these kids get together at the end of the week and actually have a debate over it. Have a discussion about what is right, what experiments prove what, and imagine if the whole world did that, how much further along we'd be, rather than say, this is cut and dry, the earth is a sphere, when it makes no sense. It is crap on top of crap. It's conjecture. Nothing but conjecture all over the place, which is opinion based on incomplete information. That's what you're teaching. That's what you're spreading. And it's sad. And I hope everyone listening, like I've said from the very start, all I'm asking you to do is to go search these things out on your own. Don't listen to me. Just take it in your head for a second that, hey, possibly maybe what he's saying is true. I should go look into a couple of these theories that we've been taught are fact. And when you start looking at them, you're going to open up a Pandora's box. You'll never see the end of it because everything that they do is a lie. It's to pad their bank accounts. It's to pad their cush little easy science jobs. And it's not true. It's not fact. I mean, if you need somewhere to start at evolution. And that's really what turned me from my atheism, was just researching evolution and not just accepting Darwin's word for it and not accepting Dawkins' word for it. In a few minutes, I'll show you a tape or a video of Richard Dawkins explaining evolution, and hopefully you see that if an evolutionary biologist must struggle through nonsense like he does, that it isn't a true theory. But I'll talk more about that when we get to evolution. But also look at the Big Bang. Look deeply into the Big Bang, and maybe you can see why I can't see how they can make fun of religion for believing something came from nothing, and yet they believe in the Big Bang, which is something coming from nothing. And even going beyond that, think of the things you have to believe in if you believe in the Big Bang. That whatever happened is the cause of space and time. Not that there was space and something happened in space, but whatever happened at the Big Bang caused space and time. So if it were the cause of space and time, then it had nowhere to happen. It couldn't have happened somewhere. It had nowhere to happen. Let's look at how about just the basic physics of cause and effect. How could you have an effect without the initial cause? And if the Big Bang did happen, then it brought forth matter. So it created matter. Now matter can be created just because this particular theory needs that to happen. It's not allowed in science. It doesn't make any sense. So before the Big Bang, the matter would have to be defined, meaning they say everything in the universe needs to have three things: spin, mass, and charge. Well, those rules or those values had to be assigned before the Big Bang. It can't happen, and then as things are flying about, then it decides to put spin and time and mass on things. It's crap. The moral of the story is that questioning science is not blasphemy. It's called science. Everyone say, you must hate science. No, I love science. I just can't find anybody to do it with me. Because if I give any facts or figures, I'm told I'm an idiot or I need to put on a tinfoil hat. So now I'm going to play a clip from Lawrence Krauss, and you'll hear him while answering this guy's question first say twice or three times that he believes in nothing. He doesn't believe in anything. Then he says, I don't use the word believe. And then not more than a minute or two after that, he goes through some of the things he believes. And then he says he doesn't believe in, he has no need to convert people of religion. He has no need to try and talk them out of their belief in God. Then goes into an explanation of how he uses religion to seduce people into buying his book so that he can throw his cosmology in. It's nonsense. But then after that, he does make a pretty good point about what science says it's supposed to be and what it actually is. It's a true point, but nobody actually follows it. He basically says science can't prove facts. We don't prove facts, yet all they claim is facts. If I go and tell somebody that gravity isn't true, they will yell and scream that I'm an idiot and that gravity is a fact. How is it a fact if Lawrence Krauss himself says science doesn't prove facts? Have a listen.
Upstairs.
That's okay. Mike, I just want to say I wholeheartedly agree with everything you believe in, and I'm not...
I believe in nothing. Let me make that clear. I don't believe in anything.
Well, yeah, okay, I'm agnostic, maybe an anti-theist.
Belief is not a word I use.
But I agree with you on everything, except perhaps your approach. And
we have somewhat differing views on this, although I think, again, we've come together in certain ways. But I'm sympathetic to what you're saying in many ways. If the question is, what are you trying to achieve? I think as a scientist, absolutely. You cannot compromise. I agree with Richard and Carly. However, as an educator, which I also have a hat on, I firmly believe that I have no interest in arguing against God or religion. It's not of interest to me. All I'm interested in is getting people interested in learning how the universe really works. Because that's so amazing. And if as a consequence they give up a belief in God, that's fine. Because I think inevitably that'll happen, personally. But that doesn't matter to me. What really is more important, I think, is ultimately getting people to take the blinders off, one way or another. And you're absolutely right, the only way to reach people is to seduce them, is to go to where they are and get them interested. And to some extent, although the effect has been sometimes the opposite as it was last night, the book I just wrote was to use religion as a seduction tool. The question, why is there something rather than nothing, sounds like a religious question, but I get to sneak in all of modern cosmology. I've often said you're a hypocrite if you think the Earth is 6,000 years old and you drive a car. Because the same laws of chemistry and physics that like the car work tell us the Earth is not 6,000 years old. You're a hypocrite if you think the Earth is 6,000 years old and you drive a car. Because the same laws of chemistry and physics that like the car work tell us the Earth is not 6,000 years old. But science another major misconception about science is that science is involved with the truth. But science another major misconception about science is that science is involved with the truth. Science cannot prove something to be absolutely true. There are no absolute truths in science. That's also how it differs from religion. Science can prove things to be absolutely false. That's how science progresses, because an idea that disagrees with the evidence of experiment is false. And it's false today and it'll be false tomorrow. I can hold a ball up, I can predict that it will fall up, I check it falls down. That idea I throw out the window. I could say the Earth is flat. I go out, it isn't flat. We don't need constructive criticism classes forever to debate whether the Earth is flat or round. But what we do in science is we get rid of all the falsehoods, and what remains has an element of truth. But even if something satisfies the test of every experiment today, and in fact that's what this young lady was referring to, it doesn't mean that we won't discover we have to modify it, be it Newtonian gravity to general relativity, or classical mechanics to quantum mechanics, or whatever we're going to learn at the edge of physics or biology. But so we progress, but we never say we know the absolute truth, because that is that's a claim that's an anathema to science. It's just not the way science works.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
So science, on the one hand, can tell us that it isn't in charge of truth, it isn't in charge of telling us what facts are, and on the other hand, we have Dawkins telling us we're idiots if we don't believe in evolution, and Neil deGrasse Tyson saying the good thing about science is that it's true whether you believe it or not. So there's a little bit of a confusion here as to what we are to believe about science. And they talk in circles, use circular reasoning. They don't follow the scientific method, period. Let's look at what that is. First, it's to make an observation. Second is to make a guess or a working hypothesis regarding that observation. Third, experiment to falsify your guess. And if falsified, then start over. If not, it becomes a theory. And fourth, after much more experimentation, the theory becomes a law of nature. Is that what anybody sees? Is that what's going on in our world? Because it certainly seems like they're just meandering through calculations and formulas and numbers and spitting out things that they say are facts. Go to HuffPost and sign up for the Science News, where you'll get an email every day. Every day they discover something. Every day, and it's nonsense. I mean, the other day it was scientists probe 100,000 galaxies looking for Earth-like planets. And I mean, do you know that we can't even get accurate pictures of Mars? Yet they said in an article in Wikipedia that there was 2 moons on Mars, or Mars has 2 moons, and it could have many more that are yet undetected. So how do we have these satellites like the Voyager or those kind of things that are millions and billions of miles away, but we don't have the capability to look at the moons of Mars? I mean, it's a joke. I have more pictures up right now of the cosmos. Aren't they pretty? Pretty blues and yellows and greens and nonsense. Again, you really think that our sun is like one of those tiny little specks, and then the entire solar system is rotating around that tiny speck? I mean, is that really what you believe? I mean, let's look at it this way. The closest star, they tell us, is 25 trillion miles away, which is about 4.5 light years. And so it's real easy to say when they tell us that, and we might think in our mind, oh, 25 trillion miles away, that seems like quite a bit. But does anybody really know how far that actually is? How far is a trillion miles? Well, a trillion miles is kind of impossible to even grasp, but we know what a trillion is. We've heard that number, so let's look at an easy-to-understand example. So let's say I owe you some money. Okay, and if I said I'd pay you back in 100,000 seconds, how long is that? Anybody have any guesses? Answer is about a day. So a day is 100,000 seconds. So what if I said I'd pay you back in 1,000,000 seconds? How long is that? Guesses? It's about 11 and a half days. And if I said I'd pay you back in 1,000,000,000 seconds, how long is that? Gravity. No, I'm kidding. Gravity isn't the answer. I was seeing if you guys were sleeping. Glad you're awake. The answer is actually 11,500 days or 31 years. So now let's see how far a trillion is. Any guesses on that? How about if I paid you back in 1,000,000,000,000 seconds? How long is that? Answer may surprise you that 1,000,000,000,000 seconds is 11.5 million days or 33,700 years. So you can see there how quickly we went from 100,000, which was a day, to 1 trillion, which was 33,700 years. So when you really start to put that in perspective, do you really think the closest star is 25 trillion? Remember, we just added up to 1 trillion. And they say the closest star is 25 trillion miles away. It's nonsense. It doesn't even make any sense. Even if you look at the theory of the speed of light, even Einstein said in his paper that the theory of the speed of light could only be used in applications where there was no gravity. So it doesn't even apply to our universe, yet they'll plug it in wherever they want, do whatever they want with it, make you believe whatever they want, teach it to our kids, teach it in schools, and they just pop out more of themselves, which is terribly frightening. Here we have a quote from Matt Dillahunty. He said, "I look forward to a day when nobody has to bother saying I'm an atheist. I don't bother identifying myself as somebody who believes in a round earth, and because the flat earth is so completely preposterous and irrelevant, nobody even bothers with it, and I'd like to see religions go the way the flat earth does." So, I mean, these are kind of things that these people think they're so smart, and they have followers of atheists that just will worship this man. And hey, I agree with some of the things he's got to say, but when it comes to things like that, he's just making claims based on other men before him, so he believes in men. What about our old friend Bill Nye? He says, "Science is the key to our future, and if you don't believe in science, then you're holding everybody back. And it's fine if you're an adult and want to run around pretending or claiming that you don't believe in evolution. But if we educate a generation of people who don't believe in science, that's a recipe for disaster. We talk about the internet, that comes from science. Weather forecasting, that comes from science. The main idea in all of biology is evolution. To not teach our children about evolution is wrong." Bill Nye. Why can't we have constructive debates in class where we show evolution and show the arguments against it? Show creation, show the arguments against it. Let's have some dialogue. We have some smart-ass kids in this world. If we actually did science as it's described, imagine how much further we'd be. These people have accepted dogmatic beliefs. They have an orthodoxy. They are strict to their orthodoxy. Why not allow outside thought? Why not allow constructive criticism? Why are these things against the rules? Why are these things against the rules? It seems as if maybe they have some sort of agenda. Otherwise, why do they only look for your credentials and your peer-reviewed papers? Why are those the only things that are allowed? What happened to evidence? What happened to merit? What if I have, a paper that I write out that has all the evidence in it? They won't even accept it. Where did you go to school? Well, what do you mean? So I was indoctrinated by your teachers? Guess what? I wouldn't have this paper if I went to school because I'd believe what you believe, which is nonsense. And that's the problem, is they have an agenda and they're forcing it on everyone, and also they've come up with a way to make you look like a fool if you don't trust them and believe them because they are learned men who have studied all this. No, they haven't studied anything. They've studied the indoctrination that they have been told to study and told is the truth. And I don't claim that they're all knowing that they're lying. I think that they think they're speaking the truth, but when somebody comes and speaks something different, if they were true scientists, they say, let me think about that. Let's test that. Let's look into that. Not laugh and say you're a complete idiot. Speaking of that, let's watch Richard Dawkins explain to us evolution. This is very important. This is fact right here, folks. Oh, I forgot to say that this little speech is only for the intellectuals and the academia as I explain evolution.
Just want to go to this lady over here. Thank you. It's fairly easy to imagine how apes can develop into humans, but I don't find it as easy to imagine how bacteria can develop into apes. Could you describe some of the species in between?
Yes. The question says it's easy to imagine how apes could evolve into humans, but it's harder to imagine how bacteria could evolve into apes. Well, one very important difference is that the time it took for apes to change into humans is a matter of perhaps 5 million years, whereas the time it took for bacteria to evolve into apes was a matter of thousands of millions of years. So it is a huge difference. And what the human imagination is capable of visualizing gets more and more difficult the longer the time span is that you have to cope with. So the intermediates that you might expect to see would be, well, starting with bacteria, an early intermediate would be some kind of protozoan. That's to say, a single-celled animal, much more complicated than a bacterium, because it's a eukaryotic cell, which means that it's actually a kind of society of bacteria. The eukaryotic cell, which is all our cells, and protozoan cells, things like amoebas, are complex societies of bacteria. Bacteria actually came together in an agglomeration, working together to form this much larger, much more complex cell. A next stage in the intermediates would be a coming together of those cells, those eukaryotic cells, to form multicellular bodies, something like a sponge. A next stage would be perhaps something like a sea anemone, which has an inside and an outside and has a feeding mechanism. The next stage would be something like a worm, which has a front and a back and a left side and a right side, and which propels itself along the sea bottom. The next stage might be something like a fish, which, well, we know what a fish looks like. Much later still, some fish started emerging from the water, and we have extremely good fossil evidence of this stage in evolution, when fish emerged from the water and became amphibians. At a later stage still, these amphibians no longer needed to go back to water to reproduce and became reptiles. At a later stage still, they became mammal-like reptiles. Instead of going along with their feet splayed out sideways like a lizard, they rose with their limbs more vertical. And they may have grown hair at this stage. We don't know whether they grew hair at this stage. And walked on all fours, and there was a magnificent flowering of mammal-like reptiles, actually before the dinosaurs. During the period of the dinosaurs, the mammals went rather into eclipse. When the dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago, the mammals started to flourish and flower and produce the magnificent range of mammals that we see today, among whom were some rather shrew-like ones who went into the trees and became adept at swinging through the trees. Some of them became adept at swinging from their arms rather than their legs. It's called brachiation. And they lost their tails. They became the apes. And that's where you wanted me to stop.
Yeah,
sorry.
You're writing everything down.
I really don't want to laugh at that, but that was some horse shit. Let's be honest. And if you need a little bit more proof, as I do, so that didn't sound real, let's listen to Bill Nye, the Science Lie, as he gives us his opinion of evolution, which I'm sure this will be much clearer.
Hi, Bill Nye here, explaining evolution with emoji. Take a look at this one. It's a molecule. Now, molecules just happen. Look at any asteroid. It's loaded with amino acids, a carbon, an oxygen, oxygen. Well, somehow, probably with energy from the sun, these molecules hooked together and accidentally found ways to reproduce themselves, the same way crystals reproduce if you leave them alone for a while. Anyway, these self-replicating molecules could not make perfect copies of themselves, and the imperfections that helped them make more copies stayed there. kept getting reproduced and reproduced and reproduced. And pretty soon you had complicated things like bacteria. And then you got multiple bacteria becoming multiple multicellular organisms like poison ivy plants and barnacles and sea jellies and even my old boss. And the key to this is time. People used to think the Earth was a few thousand years old. Then they realized it was at least a few hundreds of millions of years old. Well, now, using radioactivity, we can tell you that the Earth is 4.54 billion years old. A lot can happen in 4.5 billion years. Get a mirror, take a look at yourself. We are all a result of evolution.
So now that you've had two of the top scientists explain it to you, I wanted to remind you that it is absolutely safe to say that if you meet somebody who claims not to believe in evolution, that that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane. So I'm going to choose for myself insane. I like it better than the other two. One more thing before I move on to religion, and that is just some evidence of science working towards an agenda. Very interesting. Check this out. So this is Bob Enyart. He runs a radio show, and he got his users and his listeners and members to contribute to $10,000 to try and get a dinosaur bone tested that they thought would test earlier. And this is his conversation with the scientist that discovered the dinosaur bone.
Paleo.
Hello, could I speak to Jack Horner?
Yeah, who's calling?
This is Bob Enyart with KLTT Radio in Denver, Colorado. That's Bob Enyart.
Yeah, let me transfer you over to his office. I think he should be in there right now.
Hello?
Hello, Jack. This is Bob Enyart with KLTT Radio in Denver.
Uh-huh.
How are you doing?
Good.
Jack, I sent a letter to Bob Harmon a few weeks back offering the museum a grant of $8,000 to do a carbon-14 date test of that soft tissue T-Rex you guys dug up. And he said he would forward that to you. And I'm wondering if you saw that or considered it.
Well, carbon-14 doesn't work on something that old.
I understand that. And normally we wouldn't expect to get soft tissue out of a T-Rex skeleton either. But sometimes science proceeds by crossing your T's and dotting your I's. And you guys might have other things you'd like to carbon-14 at the same time. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, I've been able to raise a little more money, so that's up to $10,000 now, that we'd be honored to give you guys if you would consider doing that test.
Well, we can't do that test.
You can't do that?
No.
Do you mean the museum doesn't have the laboratory?
We certainly don't.
Okay, well, we're happy to pay the expense of having a lab do the test in addition to the $10,000 to the museum.
Do you know how carbon-14 works?
Yeah, I'm familiar, and I realize it's useless for anything over maybe 50,000 years or so. But I've done a talk show in Denver for 15 years, and there's a group of folks interested in science. Of course, that discovery caught their attention, and they thought, well, it'd be logical to do this, to just go ahead and do it, even though nobody would be inclined to do it, just like nobody would be inclined to look for soft tissue inside of a T-Rex.
Well, yeah, and, you know, we're still trying to figure out what it is, what it's actually made of.
Right, exactly, whether it's hemoglobin or whatever.
Well, yeah.
Jack, is the amount too small that it's just not worth the consideration?
No, that's not it.
Okay. What if I were able to raise more money?
No, the amount of money has nothing to do with it. Because carbon-14 doesn't work on something like this,
right,
your results that you get could be all over the place.
Well, they should be infinity. It should be not datable. In other words, it shouldn't come back saying it's 25,000 years old.
Right.
It should be infinity. And so that'll be a worthwhile...
Well, infinity isn't exactly what you get.
Okay.
I mean, it's like trying to date a piece of concrete.
Right.
You have to have carbon in it.
Right. You wouldn't use carbon-14. Now, the skeleton is not fossilized. Isn't that true, or largely not?
Well, it's the bone is made of calcium phosphate.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, we're still trying to figure out what the actual soft tissue is.
Right. And see, we were hoping that a test like this would just add another bit of scientific information that you would have at your disposal. And also, in that grant letter, we asked if it could be a blind test with 5 different specimens, and therefore then the museum could test 4 other specimens that you might want to have carbon-14 dated, and so you could put it all in the same batch, and those testing then will pay the cost of that. That'll be free to the museum plus the $10,000 grant.
Let me tell you where I'm coming from here.
Sure.
All right. Obviously, your group is a group of creationists.
Yes.
And the spin they can get off of it,
right,
doing it, is not going to help us.
Yeah. So even though it's just a scientific test, they're not asking for voodoo or anything.
It's not actually a scientific test. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Carbon-14 dating something with soft tissue in it. Jack, if I could raise $20,000, would it be worth?
I will talk to Mary Schweitzer about it.
Okay. I appreciate that. And how about this? I'll resend you the grant letter with the amount of $20,000 in it. And then you could talk to Mary and we'll see where it goes.
I want to know what group is sponsoring it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I need some really specific details about.
Sure.
And don't just tell it to me straight.
Of
okay?
course. I've hosted a daily talk show for 15 years. We're on a 50,000 watt AM station, KLTT. Mm-hmm. And there's a local church here, Denver Bible Church, mm-hmm. that's offered to help. But we also have pledges from any number of individuals in the Denver community.
Okay.
So we could, if you guys agree, we could send you the check within 24 hours.
Okay. Well, let me talk to Mary, and let me just talk to a few people.
Okay.
Because I don't want to, I can't afford to have it turn into a circus.
Right. Well, I do understand that, and I appreciate your time. So,
okay. I will see Mary this next week.
Oh, that's fabulous. I'd be happy to call you back in 2 weeks from now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you so much, Jack.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, so moving on, now you know my stance as far as science and why I have issues there and why I'm looking into everything and why I question everything. And now let's move on to religion or Christianity or whatever you want to call it. Basically, the conclusion that I came to was with all the nonsense out there, the lies and the misinformation, I had to go back to square one and ask myself, what am I given from the start? And it's basically my brain, my heart, my gut, call it what you will. That's my tools at my disposal. So what do I know from experience by using my tools? If I just look at my life, I can know that all men lie. Men distort the truth. Men do things for their own advantage. My parents lied to me, Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, other lies. My friends, my kids, even my wife has at a time or two lied to me. And so that taught me is that I need to really watch what I believe in just because somebody else says it's true. So along comes the Bible, obviously, and I've read it, as I'm sure most of you have, and I do find huge issues with it. For one, it sounds to me like it is human beings putting God in a box and giving him human attributes. Angry, he's jealous, he's vindictive. And what this taught me and other things, that the Word of God is not the Word of God, but the Word of men. And that was easy to come to, and I don't know how others don't. If you just start reading it and you really look at it, who is saying those things? Do you really think the all-loving creator of the world is the one telling you to stone somebody because they are unfaithful to their husband or wife? The other things that I know is that Christianity taught me that God knows all things before they happen. And this just does not work. That is something I can't settle on. If the Creator did know all things, then you have to believe the following. That one, certain souls were created by God, even though he knew that that soul would deny him and go to hell. You have to believe that, regardless if you believe in free will. If he knows all things before they happen, then he knows you have free will and will choose incorrectly. Two, that the fall of man was a known effect by placing these two perfect creatures in the Garden of Eden with Satan. I mean, that is a stupid move, yet it is celebrated and attributed to the great God of the world, the creator of all. I can't do it. God created humans knowing that they would die when he flooded the world. Again, if he knows all things, he created certain people, say 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years before the flood. Why would he have those people be born? They were going to die, be flooded in a miserable catastrophe. Four, God created Hitler and other murderers who did much more damage than we can even comprehend. Why would he create those people? There is a deliberate deception of saying, do not worship men, and then he comes as a man. I don't think God is out to play tricks and jokes on us. Obviously, others might. So these are the kind of things I'm talking about, and I actually have no problem with people believing whatever they want to believe. That's fine with me, but a lot of people were coming at me and asking me, why do you denounce Christ? Why do you this, that? And so I'm telling you, just so you know, and you know where I'm coming from. The easiest proof that I know God doesn't know all things is because somebody who knew all things would no longer exist. And I write that as if you knew every single thing that would happen to you next week, including the choices that would be made by free will beings, and you knew your responses to every situation and random occurrences, then that week has already taken place, and you no longer exist during that week. There is no God who's watching us all every day but knows what we're going to do. It's completely ridiculous. He doesn't exist if he already knows, and if he doesn't exist, then I don't exist in that world. So that's not the God that I believe in at all. Here I made a little birthday card. Tell me who this sounds like. Happy birthday to me. Hello, friends, loved ones, enemies, and those that deny my existence. It is I, your dear, loving, gracious, compassionate, and most perfect friend. Yes, perfect, I said, since you know my history of murder, genocide, drowning, anger, and jealousy all had good reason and were part of my most mysterious master plan. I'm having a party, and you are all invited to attend. It will be a splendid party full of hymns and songs in honor of me. We will also be reading from my book, and it would be in your best interest to attend. However, the choice is totally up to you. I have given you the most amazing gift of free will at your birth so that you could choose freely to attend or not attend my birthday gala. I should mention that whoever decides not to attend will no longer be in my good graces. In fact, to me, they will no longer exist. Upon your death, you will be immediately escorted to the fires and the flame of burning agony called hell. This will be a result of your own choices, and I will not be sorry for it. I look forward to spending eternity at my party with you, and will be watching you closely to see how you decide. No gifts, please. The daily adoration, prayers, worship, and the 10% tithes is plenty. So, if you just think about that, that's basically who Christians worship. The one who killed the millions during the flood. The one who has said that we're all born in sin, which is a mistake he made, not a mistake I made. He made the mistake of putting a tree in the middle of a garden and telling people not to touch it, and forgetting, oh man, that deceiver Satan, he's down there. He might tell them to eat it, and since they're perfect, they don't know what a lie is. So it's just ridiculous. So now we'll just take a look at some Bible verses, and you can see where I have issues with it, besides the fact that it's written by men, and I don't think it's smart to worship what men say. For one, Jesus says, or in the Bible it says, "Now behold, one came to him and said, 'Good teacher, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life?' So he said to him, 'Why do you call me good? No one is good but one, that is God. But if you want to enter into life, keep the commandments.'" So if you read a verse like that, how does anybody say Jesus was God? I don't understand it. I don't get it. To me, he's an idol who is made of silver and gold, who is bowed to, worshipped, worn around your neck. It's a celebration of God dying. I don't understand it. Also, if you didn't know, that the Bible was originally written without punctuation. So when it was translated, they had to add that. So all I did here is change a little bit of the punctuation. Tell me how this verse reads now. It says, "Do not be deceived, for many will come in my name," Christians, "saying, I, Jesus, am the Christ, and will mislead many. You will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See to it that you are not frightened, for these things must take place, but that is not yet the end." So all I'm saying there is, you could just change the punctuation there and read it a different way. That's saying that Jesus says, they're going to say I'm the Christ. Don't believe him. Then if you look at the popes, you'll see that supposedly, as per Catholicism, I know Christians don't believe in the Pope, but the Catholics who do, the Pope basically speaks on behalf of God. That's what you're told. And if you look throughout history, go ahead and look at some of the things that popes did and have done, and look at things that they've said, like Pope Pius X. "I alone am the successor of the apostles, the vicar of Jesus Christ. I am the way, the truth, and the life." Just seems kind of blasphemous to me. Pope Pius IX said, "The Pope and God are the same, so I have all the power in heaven and on earth." I mean, these people are not representatives of God. And if they're not, then neither are the ones who claimed that they wrote the Bible under his spirit. Here's another one. "Anyone who attempts to construe a personal view of God which conflicts with the church dogma must be burned without pity." Sounds like a vicar of Christ to me. "No man outside obedience to the Pope of Rome can ultimately be saved. All who have raised themselves against the faith of the Roman Church and died in final impenitence have been damned and gone down straight to hell." Thank you, Pope Clement VI. So, I've got another verse here. Oh no, this isn't a verse, this is just my point. In my opinion, take it as you will, Jesus' sacrifice is the least of all sacrifices in human history. A lot of people get taken aback by that. Oh, how could you say that? Well, how about because Jesus knew he was God according to you, so he knew he was going to heaven, meaning he knew he was going to sit at the right hand of God, he was going to judge the living and the dead, and he suffered for a day. I mean, there's people who suffer every day for 20 years. Tommaso Campanella was in jail for 27 years. People are raped for 10 years, 20 years by their parents, by their uncles, by their aunts. Kids die of starvation, and they probably were miserable and in pain and suffering for years before the actual death kicked in. And Jesus suffered for a day. And if he suffered for a day and knew he was going to rise again and go straight to heaven, then he basically gave up his shitty earthly existence, his shitty human existence, that he didn't feel like he belonged here, and he got to go for a heavenly existence at the right hand of God and will come back in the future to judge us all. That is not a sacrifice. In any way, shape, or form, a sacrifice is defined as giving up something you want for something you don't want. Not the opposite. You don't give up something you don't want for something that you can't wait for. That's not a sacrifice. I don't give up broccoli for M&Ms. It's just not a sacrifice in my mind. And where was he for 18 years? We're just going to allow the person that we call God to disappear from the age of 12 to 30? Where did he go? What was he doing? That makes no sense to me. No human being has ever been born of a virgin. These kind of things are clues that I think tell us that we're not supposed to believe in this guy, yet 20% of the world believes that he is God. God that had to come to earth. That's pretty insane. So these are the kind of things I'm talking about. The the stories seem either made up or changed. Jesus saying, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. That seems like it's written by members of the government. Hey, make sure you tell them to give their taxes. It's crazy. How come they say he died and rose again in 3 days? He died on a Friday at around noon, let's say. Friday to Saturday at noon is 1 day. Saturday to Sunday at noon would be 2 days, but he rose first thing in the morning. So he was dead a day and a half. So these are the kind of things that have been, if they've been changed, then the Bible's been changed. If the Bible's been changed, then how is it God's Word? And I mean, there's clear examples. Just look up a verse, and then it brings up those websites that have multiple verses or multiple editions of the Bible, and they've been changed. Numbers have been changed. So where are these plagues that are supposed to happen to these people? That's what's said in the Bible. That's what I believed when I was a young Catholic. I thought people who added or subtracted from God's Word would be punished. And yet, it seems like everybody's added or subtracted to him. So how am I supposed to be responsible to pick which version is correct? And believe me, when everybody's screaming, you must read the King James Version, that should be a sign. Who's telling me this? Oh, men? Or is it God telling me this? No, it's men. Because God doesn't speak to me, and I've never talked to Jesus. He's never come to me and said he's died for my sins. So I don't think he's God. I think the Bible puts a lot of hate into people, and I don't think they get people to put their money in the right direction. This image you see on the screen now, 46 million church-going families in the United States donate an average of $880 a year. That means $40.5 billion per year is donated by Christian Americans. If you divide that by 365, $111 million a day is donated. There's 30,000 kids that die every day in Africa, and to save an African child would cost $2 per day, which would pay for hospitals, nurses, milk, clean water, bed nets, clothing, vaccines, everything. So that means 11 million kids die per year. And to care for 11 million kids at $2 a day times 365 would cost $8.03 billion a year. So let's see, if the church would have any funds remaining, if they saved 11 million suffering children every year, 40.5 billion minus 8.03 billion leaves them with 32.47 billion. Wow, an immediate and life-changing destination for donations. But instead, we buy houses for people like Joel Osteen. Joel, you really think it's okay that you're taking these people's money and preaching and buying yourself 4-story houses and with elevators and going around to all these cities and charging $75 a ticket? You think that's okay? You think that's right? Well, you know, I walk with the Lord, and he convinces these people that I'm speaking truths, and so, you know, I like to take the money from the people, and I build myself a house, and I think God wants me to have good things, and I think he wants us to be happy and wants me to be successful in my life, and he wants me to have good things and a beautiful wife and a beautiful house, and these things come from really putting God first in my life and sharing the love of Christ with my congregation. At the end of the day, if my congregation, if they want to reach into their pockets and empty their wallets for me, that's really God's working in their lives through them to enrich me, and who am I to go against God's will? And then got this joker, Creflo Dollar. Luckily I got an exclusive with him, got to sit in on his last little preaching tirade. Take a listen. Have you seen that the enemy has got to discredit the voices of truth and the greedy? Because he don't want you to know that you can walk on water and fly that $65 million private jet all around the world just because you got some people to believe in some stupid nonsense coming out of your mouth. I can dream. I can dream as long as I want to. You can't stop me. You can't stop me from stealing from people till Jesus comes. I mean, if Jesus rose from the dead, would we not celebrate this event on the day he rose from the dead? No, we would. We would not celebrate it on the equinox. And these are the kind of things you need to look at and make the decisions for yourself. This is why I didn't want to get into religion, because I do think it's a personal choice. But if you guys were asking, and all those who emailed me, if you have any more questions about it, you can write me. But basically, you kind of got an idea where I stand with religion. Does it mean I don't think there's a God? No. You know, I do think that there's no possible way this universe is here accidentally by happen chance and it's all a mistake, or as Bill Nye put it, accidentally, and these things just happen, and I don't really believe that. If you look at NASA's vision, it says, to reach for new heights and reveal the unknowns so that we do and learn will benefit the entire human race. So now I want you to watch a quick news report of this is how they're going about their mission statement. This lady basically tried to sell a moon rock, or it's a little speck of moon dust that was given to her husband from Neil Armstrong. Watch what happens if you happen to have any moon dust in your house and you try and sell it, which is legal. It's your property. You can sell it to whoever you want. Just don't let NASA overhear your conversations.
It's a moon rock dust that she's owned for nearly 40 years.
And it could actually be worth, get this, more than $1 million. She tried to make that deal in May, and then she was confronted by government agents. National correspondent Ben Tracy has more on the story that is really now just coming to light.
We just walked over.
74-year-old California grandmother Joanne Davis thought she was going to her local Denny's for a simple business transaction, but then it got ugly.
And I get in. Someone is grabbing me from the back. Now they're pulling me out of the booth, and they have a hold of me pretty darn good. And the force was like unnecessary in my part because I'm like 110. I'm 4'11".
She expected to sell a tiny speck of moon rock encased in a paperweight she claims was given to her space engineer husband 40 years ago. But after she contacted NASA to see if they could help her find a buyer, federal agents set up a sting at this Denny's. They suspected she was dealing in stolen government property.
It's not stolen. I know it, and they know it too. But how else are they going to credit themselves with how they took it? I mean, how do they justify it?
NASA declined to comment on an ongoing investigation. Yet 5 months after being detained and questioned for 2 hours, Davis still hasn't been charged with anything.
There's no such law that moon rocks belong to the federal government. There are laws about stealing from the federal government, and I understand that. And if anybody could show that these moon rocks were stolen from the federal government, that's a horse of a different color. But they haven't shown that.
Davis claims the agents bruised her arm and tailbone during the incident, but the emotional wounds are far worse.
I mean, I felt humiliated. I felt, this may not be proper to say, but I'll tell you, I felt raped. I really did.
At this point, Davis simply wants NASA to return what she feels is her property. But she does have an attorney, and they're considering legal action of their own. Ben Tracy, CBS News, Los Angeles.
All right, guys, that's it for today. Get another video out soon, but I wanted to make sure I got this religion topic off the desk. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. But just make sure you really look at your deepest held beliefs. I don't think there's any problem with running them through the mill and seeing if you really do believe them and if they deserve to be believed in. This is jeranism, reminding you to not lie to each other. Take it easy. You live on a flat earth.